Africa's experienced jurists are appearing for interviews before the Judicial Service Commission for 4 vacant Superior Court's positions. Among the most senior vacancies is that of a Constitutional Court Justice. Joining us now for more on this conversation is Judges Matter Research Officer Mbekezeli Benjamin, who's been watching this very closely and giving some blow-by-blow accounts of what has been going on there. But let's talk a little bit about why this week is so crucial in terms of the decisions that have got to be made.
Good evening, Thabo, and good evening to the viewers. Well, this week is really crucial in terms of how the JSC performs its functions of appointing judges to the Superior Court. It's also, I think, important in terms of the specific courts where they are aiming to appoint judges. These include the Constitutional Court, the Electoral Court, the Land Court, and of course the High Court in the Northwest. All of these courts are really important, but particularly the first 3, which at the moment are really on the spotlight.
In many ways, this is not only, of course, an interview on the judges, but it's also, in some sense, an interview on the JSC itself and the criteria that they are going to be using as far as these interviews are concerned. What are we looking for?
Well, look, last year, the JSC developed written criteria and guidelines on what specifically they are looking for. You'll recall that in the past, the JSC basically had a free-for-all. They would ask any question under the sun when it came to the interviews. So the criteria were meant to set out quite clearly what the JSC looks for. And some of the things that are included in the criteria are, for example, legal experience, your qualifications as a lawyer, either as a practitioner or as a magistrate or a legal academic. There's also issues relating to your personal qualities, your diligence, your work ethic, your integrity. There's also something that parts of the criteria that look at the kind of contribution you've made to the legal community. That, for example, would include what kind of involvement have you had in legal organizations that have empowered women, that have empowered more younger practitioners to rise up, and your broader contribution in terms of your legal practice, if you're a practitioner, or your publications as a legal academic. All of those things are basically looking at how are you as a judge, how qualified or how ready are you to be a judge. And then there's also the last aspect, which looks at your performance when you were given an opportunity to act as a judge in the particular court. So they will look at, for example, your track record. Are you able to deliver high quality judgments? Are you able to deliver those judgments on time and very quickly after the hearing? All of those qualities must fit into the requirement that is set out by the Constitution, that everyone who wants to be a judge must be fit and proper and must be suitably qualified.
So let's look at the Constitutional Court vacancy itself. You're saying that this particular vacancy has been, I suppose, brought about by the retirement of Justice Sisi Pepe. But the Constitutional Court itself has not been working with the full complement, you're saying, since 2016. How did that affect the work of the Constitutional Court?
Well, the Constitutional Court has been affected by the vacancies, but also having to appoint acting judges. A study was done by 2 academics from the University of Cape Town, Ms. Norina Ali and Dr. Leo Bonzaya, and they looked at the performance of the Constitutional Court in the 10 years between 2011 and 2021. And what they found was that the performance of the court was actually going down. One of the factors was that the Constitutional Court had now a wider jurisdiction. So from 2013, the Constitutional Court previously used to deal with only constitutional matters. But as from 2013, it started hearing all matters. That means the workload of the Constitutional Court went up, but of course the judges remained the same, and so that did have an impact. But also not having the full complement of judges means that there couldn't be coherence on some of the key principles that make the court function. So you could say there was a lot more dissent or disagreement, which means that it took more time to produce judgments. So the impact of not having a full complement of judges meant that the judgments took longer, and which is why the JSC was under some pressure to make sure that they get the judges appointed. Unfortunately, they have not succeeded so far. They have this current vacancy, which arose in 2021 when Justice Sisi Khampepe retired. They have been trying to fill that vacancy at least 4 times. This is literally the 5th time that they're trying to fill the vacancy.
You are concerned about the pace, or are you, of the interviews, how long they take? I mean, 4-hour interview, you're saying, could it be an indication of something? Is it saying something to you about the process and the criteria that is being used?
Yes, absolutely. The length of the interview is something that we as Judges Matter, when we did a study, which we published in an academic journal in 2021, we looked at interviews over a period of 10 years. And what we found is that the longer the interview takes, the more out of focus it is. That means the JSC is no longer focusing on the right qualities of the candidate. They're certainly not asking the right questions, and they're getting the interview to go on for too long, which means both the candidates and the commissioners get fatigued. Today was a perfect example of what our study found. An interview that lasts for 4 hours cannot possibly be productive. We saw in the first half of today's interview, in fact, the questions that were asked were so few, but it took up such a long time. The second half of the interview also took a long time, but at least there were more questions. So what we are saying as a recommendation is that the chairing must be effective, the focus must be on the criteria, so that the interviews don't go on for too long, just like we saw today with the 4-hour interview.
So you've got 2 candidates there who do not have prior judgments to their names. That is Advocate Matthew Chuckelson and Professor David Bilchitz. How do you think the JSE should assess their experience of being jurists if they do not have judgments to their name?
Well, I think the JSC, and this is part of the challenge that they face today, is they need to have a broader view of what kind of experience is needed by the court. Because currently, the Constitutional Court doesn't have a lot of experience in areas such as private law, in areas such as commercial law, and even some of the constitutional expertise could use a boost. And so when you look at the candidates, you ask whether they do possess some of this experience. And the way that the Constitutional Court works is that judges sit as a bench of 11. So they all sort of balance against each other. Some judges will have a particular strength in one area. Another judge might have a strength in another area. And so what you're hoping to get is that the experience that is on the court is balanced, is able to cover most of the fields of law. And so how they should assess the experience of both the legal practitioners and the academics who were never judges before is to look at their track record. So, for example, today's interview was focused on Professor Bilchitz. He's recognized as an expert on constitutional law and human rights, and he's written quite extensively and quite deeply on some of these issues. And so when you look at his experience, you weigh it against the current composition of the Constitutional Court, and you see whether his experience can boost the current experience, and that's how you should measure it. You shouldn't look at it in isolation, because there you'll see inevitably that because this person doesn't have judgment, then they don't qualify, which is not the way that it should be done in terms of the Constitution.
Is the JSC under a considerable amount of pressure once again to appoint female judges?
Well, it is really unfortunate that this time around there were no women candidates in the Constitutional Court. And in fact, we've never had a majority Constitutional Court that had women, as a majority. The Constitutional Court has always had 1, 2, 3 women, or 4 at least, and nothing more than that. So this time around, we are going to lose that opportunity. But as for the other courts, tomorrow on Tuesday, there will be candidates for the land court, which is a really, really important court that has to deal with issues of land justice. And there, 4 of the candidates are women. Oh, sorry, 3 out of the total of 4 candidates are women. And that means this is another opportunity for the JSC to fill a position of leadership with a woman. Because currently there are about 4 women who hold leadership positions in the judiciary out of 16 possible positions. So even there is a big gap that the JSC should fill.
Mbekezeli Benjamin, appreciate your time. Thank you for your intervention this evening. That is Mbekezeli Benjamin there doing a bit of a preview as those interviews are currently going on. Started today, and there'll be more, of course, as the week continues. Let's turn to